all the stuff that's happened in the NFL plus some NBA and some other things. There's a whole bunch to get into right now. Jason Fitz, the host of First Take, Your Take on ESPN Radio, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, where we got so much going on. Fitz, welcome back, man. How you doing?
Man, all things considered, I'm doing great. Y'all staying safe? Everybody good?
We are doing okay. Yeah, we're quarantined at my house on the porch for the foreseeable future. But hey, the modern tech. How has it affected your day-to-day work? Has it changed the way you're doing stuff for your shows?
Oh yeah, 1,000%. Right now I'm doing the show from home, and that's sort of just everybody's being safe, which right now is what we should be doing, right? So everybody's got a mindset on how to be safe and how we can sort of keep everybody out of harm's way. And so, I'm doing the show from home, which is different because I'm used to being able to, look at a producer in the eye and like talk about things. So, it's a little different. But the biggest difference for all of us is used to be able to, you could look at it and say, okay, I know what we're going to talk about this week. Now I feel like we just wake up every day and it's like, hey, we're going to take whatever we're given and we're going to be happy with it. So, suddenly people are no longer tired of talking about Brady and Dak. That's all I'm saying.
Well, the Brady thing, I mean, this is, I saw somebody who played in the league who covers the Buccaneers say that Brady signing was almost as big as when Reggie White left the Eagles and went to Green Bay. I mean, that's how significant that Brady leaving the Patriots to go to Tampa kind of was. I mean, do you look at this as like a monumental moment in the NFL?
It is today. Let's see where it is in a year when we've seen – because there's a great debate. Is Brady washed? Is he not washed? I don't think he is. Look, he didn't have a lot of weapons. I still think he's a good quarterback. But if he goes in and he struggles, that's the sort of stuff we don't know. And everybody knows this. But when you're dealing with quarterbacks in an accelerated age, they hit a wall sort of alarmingly fast, right? So whenever that wall gets hit, there's going to be just a quick eye-opening moment. So for the sake of the Buccaneers and Bucs fans, I think this is sort of Reggie White-ish for them because now as a franchise – they come back to the forefront of everybody's mind. So I think it's absolutely massive, but he's going to have to come in and he's going to have to play really well from the outset, which I don't think is as easy as everybody else does.
I was going to say, what do you think about the fit? I mean, he's got Evans, he's got Godwin down there, O.J. Howard, Bruce Arians. So do you like the fit for Brady?
Sure. Yeah, I do like the fit. I think the hardest part about all of it to me in my mind is that, he's not the only older quarterback in that division that's expected to put up big numbers. Last time I checked, Drew Brees has never had a hard time putting up big numbers. So this presumption that suddenly the Bucs become a Super Bowl team sort of forgets to me that the Saints were 13-3, and not to mention the fact that the Falcons were much better the back half of the season. They go add Dante Fowler Jr. now, like they're going to have the ability to get after quarterbacks too. I don't think we're making enough of the adjustment out of the Patriot way for Brady because he's going to wake up and realize when tiny details aren't right at practice and he's used to being able to chomp on somebody or have coach chomp on somebody, maybe it's not that big a deal. And maybe that's okay in the beginning, but they lose a couple games in a row. Is he really going to be okay with the lack of the Patriot way? I don't know. After 20 years, I feel like he's going to come in and say, well, this is how we used to do it. And I'm not sure everybody wants to hear that. So I think there's a bigger adjustment than people want.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Now, in hindsight, I mean, here's a guy who's 42 years old. He's 20 years with the one team. They've had so much success. When you look back at this in a couple of years, you're going to say, what was this guy thinking? Or like, hey, this is Tom Brady. He can do what he wants to do. Or was it like, come on, man, you should have wrote it out and just finished the story with the Patriots?
In the end, if he goes out and stinks, we'll forget it in 5 years when he goes to the Hall of Fame, right? So, to me, this was a matter of Brady walks in and says, hey, I got ways I want to do things. Well, fine. But hasn't Bill Belichick also earned the right to hear that and say, great, cool, I respect that, but I'm not changing the way I do business because just like you've won 17 divisions, so have I. So I feel like both of these guys have every right to be sort of tied into who they feel they are. So at that point, it becomes about who can have, long-term success. And we all know that coaching doesn't have the same age limitations. So Belichick's going to find somebody else. The only surprising thing to me is that the Patriots didn't better prepare themselves for this because that's what, to me, going into this with only Jarrett Stidham as a known option makes zero sense.
Yeah, so we keep hearing about all the chairs that are out there. The quarterbacks, there's more quarterbacks than there are actually chairs, but you have Jarrett Stidham as a starting quarterback currently in the NFL. Is there a guy that entices or intrigues you to now be Bill Belichick's wingman for the next couple of years?
Yeah, it's Andy Dalton. And look, we all know that Andy Dalton has a certain reputation. How much of that reputation is because he was the Bengals quarterback? So to me, if I'm Bill, I look at it and say, okay, Andy Dalton's somebody that led the Bengals to the playoffs. Like, he's played meaningful football, and some people think he has the ability to be at least a decent quarterback. I'm looking at this across the board and saying, man, if I'm Bill, I want Andy Dalton because Andy Dalton needs an entire image reclamation. So he's going to come in and do whatever he has to do. And then I think we might be reminded quickly that it wasn't Andy that was dysfunctional in that relationship. Maybe it was the Bengals. And so Bengals fans are going to have to watch him go be successful elsewhere.
That's interesting. We're talking with Jason Fitz, host of First Take, Your Take, ESPN Radio here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. So much NFL happening. You know, when you see something like happen here in Philly, Malcolm Jenkins, they let him walk. Now, years ago, they did the same thing with Brian Dawkins, and the fans went nuts. So how tough is it, do you think, when you're in the position that some of these teams are? You got Brady, 42, Malcolm Jenkins, 32, that wanted more money, and he hasn't missed a snap in like 6 years. How hard is it to say, we can't pay you for what you did, but what you did is why we can't pay you? It's almost because he played so much that's why they can't invest in him anymore.
Well, yeah, and you're right. And it's a big reminder that we have to all remind ourselves, first and foremost, what we've learned in the last 3 days is a reminder that for everybody involved, for players and teams, it's all business. It gets weird when it gets personal. Like, we see Bill O'Brien ship out DeAndre Hopkins. We keep hearing that was based on something personal. That doesn't work. The rest of the time, you see the Patriots say, you know what, maybe we don't want to do business that way. We see, Brady say, hey, I want to go play somewhere else. You see the Cam Newton was the face of the Panthers all the way to a Super Bowl, and they were so flippant in letting him go that they just went to Twitter. I mean, that's where we are. It's a reminder through all of it that it's business. And look, if you're the Eagles, you got to move forward because it's business. But if you're Malcolm, there are people that will still pay you a high dollar to play. So, for everybody in all of it, like, the hardest part for us as fans is it becomes so personal. And the more you talk to teams and players, the more you remember for most of them, it's dangerous when it becomes personal. At the end, it's just business.
Yeah, it was such a weird day when it all kind of happened. It was like, Malcolm Jenkins, he wants to stay, and then all of a sudden he's gone, and we're like waiting for the terms of his deal, and it didn't seem like a deal that was so unmanageable, I guess, for Philly to kind of do. And then they make the trade for Darius Slay. It's just been a wild day, the last 3 or 4 days for Philly. But NFL free agency going on. Other than the Brady signing, is there something that has happened in the NFL that has changed the complexion of how we're going to view the 2020 season? Lord willing, we have one.
Well, I don't know about the 2020 season per se, but I think the lack of market for Jadeveon Clowney is really significant because if you read some of the insiders leading into it, there were people that projected he'd become the first ever defensive lineman to get $25 million a season. Now we find out he's asking for 20, and teams aren't comfortable with that. So there was a real pushback positional value-wise this offseason that I think is significant. So if you're looking across the board and you're Yannick Ngakoue or you're Jadeveon Clowney, you thought that maybe you'd hit that moment where defensive linemen could get quarterback money. And what you really saw are teams look across the board and say, nope, not happening. And that to me is particularly significant. As far as the scope of next season, I think Miami made themselves better. I think Cleveland has made themselves better. And I know, I never jumped on the Cleveland bandwagon last year. I think Cleveland's a better football team than they were. We still don't know who they have as the head coach, but they've gotten themselves some offensive weapons. So I feel better about Cleveland today than I did a year ago.
I'm glad you brought up Miami because you're right. They were like the Redskins of this offseason. They just went out and signed everybody, or last year's Cleveland. So are they going to be the hot team that everybody's picking to be in the playoffs this year that didn't make it last year?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you spent $131 million on the first day of free agency. It does that to you. But let's also, though, remember the fact that I know they spent $131 million, but every time this happens, we get reminded dream teams don't do well in the NFL. But also, I think they're likely to go into this season with some combination of Ryan Fitzpatrick and then eventually a healthy Tua Tagovailoa as their quarterback if the draft breaks their way. I mean, I still don't love the quarterback position for them. And Tua, yes, eventually, but we don't know what his health situation is going to be like. So, I think Miami is going to get a lot of hype, and I'm just cautious for all of that for them. To me, if we have that big of a question mark at the quarterback position, that's still very significant in that division.
Well, and another interesting, story that's moving on is like all these, the fact that we talked about all these quarterbacks out there, but there is a possibility, I guess, that Belichick could draft a guy, or, you mentioned Stidham. He was drafted last year in the 4th round. Maybe he's the guy that they feel like is the guy, but how about the fact or the possibility of Bill Belichick getting creative on draft day and moving up and doing some crazy things?
I mean, it wouldn't necessarily stun me. I mean, we got to see what happens with guys like Jacoby Brissett that he has some familiarity with, and then do they find a reclamation project at quarterback that they think is great? But look, I'm for everybody that's coming in, and my Twitter mentions have just blown up with Jake Fromm to the Patriots. I don't think Jake Fromm is an NFL quarterback, so I don't think that's a realistic solution. And in fact, I think there are 2 quarterbacks in this draft you can actually bank on: Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa. I think they're both going to be great. Not just good, I think they're both going to be great. Ultimately, after that line, there are a lot of question marks about all of them. So if you can't move up into the top 5, I'm not sure you can get a guy that you necessarily love. You might get a guy you sort of like. So I don't know, because of just where they sit in the draft, that's what becomes difficult for a lot of these teams, and why I think teams had to look at the quarterback position sort of aggressively right now, because I don't think the draft has given you much outside of the top 5.
Jason Fitz with us. He's the host of First Take, Your Take on ESPN Radio. He's on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And a couple things, by the way, this just in, the Rams are releasing Todd Gurley, so he will be a free agent. So that's another name that's going to be out on the market soon. But I wanted to switch over to the NBA real fast and what's happening with them. They're in their season. They don't know when they're going to be able to come back. But do you think this could be the template and the precursor of us seeing the NBA as we know it change its calendar?
I hope so. I mean, I think that's a positive that could come from it. If anyone has supported shortening the NBA season, you have to remember that one thing we know is the NBA is innovative. So I expect they'll come back in June with some sort of innovative concept for how they're doing a playoff. They'll give us something. But if this pushes it all, and we expect it will, and they still try and get these games played, and I think they will, that means it's going to change the beginning of next season, which is huge. So if we see an actual push, and I've seen some reports say that next season can be pushed as late as, let's say, Christmas Day, I don't think that's the worst idea, because how many casual fans aren't really paying attention until Christmas Day? So, whatever it takes to captivate attention, we know the NBA will do, and they'll keep everything on the card. So I think it'd actually end up long-term, ironically, being really good for the league.
Right. Well, that's what his name is escaping me, the owner of the Hawks. Didn't they present to say, hey, why are we competing with the NFL? Let's start on Christmas and just, that's the way our league would just be from now on. Why play? And then, we had a sports business guy on the other day who brought up an interesting point, which was, look, these regional sports networks, they want those games on in October and November because they don't have anything else on. So that's another slice of the pie that I guess gets kind of swept under the rug.
Yeah, but as much as we talk about the slice of the pies that would be, would suffer from that, and I agree with all of that, you also have to remember, though, that anything that increases eyeballs during the big games that matter will increase ad revenue because you can charge more for it. So, you got to feel like what's more important, the regionals being happy in October or getting huge national games in, let's say, January that mean more and people pay more attention to it.
All right, Jason Fitz. Now, I've seen that ESPN, the Ocho, is coming back, and your mug is in the ad for it. So which of these events is your, marquee event? Is it the Stupid Robot Fighting League, the 2019 Jelly Marble Run, the Cherry Pit Spitting? Which one are you a big fan of?
Well, I'll tell you this. First of all, cornhole doesn't get enough, rep in all of this. When you tour in country music, you get good at cornhole. So I'm just saying, I feel like I'm sort of a ringer on that. But unknown fact, I kicked Mike Gola Jr.'s butt in the Cherry Pit Spit. I mean, and that's rare for me to be able to say anything that I kicked his butt in. So the Cherry Pit, I think I might be kind of a ringer on the Cherry Pit Spit thing.
All right. Well, the Ocho is going to be debuting midnight this Sunday. You can check out ESPN the Ocho, and it's got the Cornhole Championships kicking it all off, the World Axe Throwing League, and all sorts of fun games like that we kind of need right now with the state of sports being at the pause button. But a lot of NFL, the NBA stuff, we'll see what happens with baseball. And, by the way, hockey has a kind of an innovative thought about what they might do with their playoff that we're going to get into tonight. But Jason Fitz, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thanks, pal.
Thanks, y'all. Stay safe. Have a great week.
You do the same. Jason Fitz here on the Sports Bash.